Welcome to the Spent the Rent podcast. I am your host, Patty Rose. My guest today is a longtime dear friend and outgoing chair from the Springfield School Board, Zach Bessett. Zach, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited. It's fun.
Yeah, this is really cool. We had you on. It's crazy. It was literally 101 episodes ago. You were in episode number 27. This is episode 128. So the show has definitely grown. I listened to it to kind of see what we had gone over, and we got nothing done. It was really fun. I encourage anybody to go back and listen to these old episodes because it was a lot of fun. We talked a lot about the work you had done with Willamalane for middle school dances and working with kids. And we're going to talk about Willamalane at the end of this, because you're changing jobs. Yesterday was your last day with Willamalane, so I'm sure that you want to give some shout outs to the people that have been there for you for 20 plus years. So we'll get to that in a bit. The reason I had you on is because you had at that time had just recently been appointed or been elected to the school board in Springfield, Oregon, and you ran unopposed. And it's crazy how different this time around looks for the candidates that were running. And so I wanted to do this, and I'm glad you agreed to do it because we just had our election on Tuesday to appoint the new school board members for Springfield and for 4J and in Eugene. And you and I had talked. I cut your hair a couple months back, and you had told me you were not seeking re-election, and you had some pretty interesting takes on why. And so I was like, well, we have to do this on the podcast. So Here we are. So Zach, it's great to see you. It's great to talk to you. It's been a long time.
Yes, sir. I'm glad to be here. And I did 100. I can't believe you've done so many episodes. It's crazy.
It's pretty wild. Yeah. And it's growing.
Yeah.
And, people get fatigued as far as listening to every show. But, just for anyone listening, real quick update, you can listen to the podcast on any streaming site, Apple Podcast, Spotify, all that good stuff. Or you can watch on YouTube, primarily or exclusively on YouTube. So depending on where you're listening to this, it's available in both audio and video. I'm not doing Facebook video anymore because I'm trying to plan my escape from Facebook. And so I was pretty frustrated with the technicals behind the scene with them. And I just felt like one place would be better. And YouTube is obviously the standard. So I'm pretty pleased with the setup on YouTube. So anybody listening, make sure that you go and you subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/2RD. But
my favorite thing about the Patty Rose podcast is that, or Spent the Rent podcast is that you don't have to listen to like 30 minutes of ads and like try to fast forward through all the people's like tour dates and stuff.
Yeah,
like
I definitely do have ads, and I'm going to play an ad in the middle of this. I created a little break spot for my title sponsor, but nice. I try to keep it light. I try to keep it light. This isn't about making money. I do basically break even with the podcast, and I've turned down sponsorships because they wanted creative control, and I was like, no, you can have none. Is how much you get. So anyway, so let's get to it. Thanks for doing this, and first things first, what should the new members of the school board expect?
Oh man, I think, so we got some new members, but we have Jonathan Light who's coming in who definitely knows the system and knows how it works, and very astute to how to get things done in a school district. And I didn't endorse anybody because during the last election cycle, there was just like some nasty stuff going around, and it was like really not positive. And people asked for my endorsement, and at that time I was like, I'm not endorsing anybody because I'm gonna have to work with you for the next 2 years before my term expires. And I was like, I'm just not gonna endorse anybody ever again for something that I'm involved in at that level, because it's a weird situation when somebody who you didn't endorse ends up on the board and you have to work with them in the future. And this is the work I'm proudest of in my life, probably. And I want to be able to come back to it at some point, even though my term's over. And man, I don't want bad bridges. And while I'm all about sticking up for what's right and the people that are right, I think in this race we had some really, we had Anthony and Jonathan that were running for that position that were both like super awesome dudes. And either way it would have went, I would have been like, great, we have somebody who's going to advocate for kids. I thought Jonathan had a lot of experience knowing how to run the board and a lot of history, and with what I mean, most of our members have been there less than 3 years, and so I'm thinking, Jonathan's going to be a great fit, along with Emilio, who's been there for a while, to maybe not even take the leadership role. I'm sure they will, but like just to have like some historic knowledge and some knowledge of like how to really get things done. I think my biggest, in talking to like new school board members or anybody getting involved in politics for the first time, man, the learning curve is tremendous. And I'm a pretty open and honest guy, and like to say I don't have a clue how to run. I knew Robert's Rules of Order to some extent, but like when you actually have to lead a meeting with it and know your stuff, it's different. So
yeah, it's a huge thing. I mean, I remember when I first heard that you were going to run, it was an unopposed seat, and so we kind of joked about it, but once you get in office, it's a very serious job. I mean, there's a lot to it, and then
sure.
and you had no idea when you had signed up that we were going to be looking at COVID. That was something.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and it really changes things. So I want to give a shout out to all the people that put their name out this time around because of that. Because of many reasons, but knowing what they knew that we were dealing with distance learning and, getting kids back into school and like the safety element of it and all that, those questions are humongous. And so there's a lot, Anthony Reed, I want to talk about it briefly, because I think Anthony is one of the most motivated campaigners I've ever seen in our local area. And he's so off the cuff and he's so genuine. And I don't want to say losing. I think him not being successful with his run, well, that's actually worse. Losing, he was very successful with his run. He didn't win the seat, but I think that he's going to grow even more because of it. So I think he's got a really bright future. I'm not really familiar with Jonathan Light, to be honest with you, but I take the words that you had said on Facebook where you weren't endorsing, but you gave him high praise, which sounded like an endorsement. So you can call it what you want. I know that feeling because a race for me, the city council race where it was Chris McAllister, Johannes Tadeo, and Corey Rodley. I, at the very last second, kind of endorsed Johannes because Chris had been taken out in the primary or the midterms or whatnot, and then Corey and Johannes, I felt like they were both amazing, and I just, for representation, I thought that Johannes would bring a lot for the Latinx community. But I think you're right. I kind of regretted it because Corey Rodley was incredible and accessible, and I kind of regretted endorsing completely. I should have endorsed both. And the DPLC has done that. The DPLC will endorse candidates that are running against each other if they're both Democrats because, they're both amazing. They're basically saying we back them. So I think that that's one way you can go about it.
That's a huge thing to like admit lately. It seems like everyone is like so one-sided and life is like a competition, but to like understand, even in talking to Jonathan and Anthony, both support each other. Both are like, Jonathan's a great dude. Anthony's a great dude. My name needs to be in the hat too. And like, they both have great things to offer. And I've talked to Anthony a little bit and sent him some messages and said, stay involved, get on the budget committee, get involved in some other stuff, and your time will come. I mean, the turnover we've had on the board in the last, 5 years has been pretty crazy. Most people don't serve their whole term or, and stuff comes up. People move, people change jobs. Like it's a volunteer job. So you can't always fulfill 4 years from now is a long time. You don't know what's going to happen in your personal life or your career. So there's always, appointments that are going to happen at some point. So having strong people like that on deck that the board has a relationship with, that they know, at least knows what the budget process like, knows what a board meeting looks like. People have been sitting around studying who can represent what we feel like the community needs the most, and then also know enough to step in and fill the role. So having those people is so huge. And we have a great budget committee, but most of them are just not interested in the board work. They serve a great role, but they just aren't ready to do that. And that's huge on their part. I've always been like a serial overcommitter. And so I don't understand that. But in my old age and my wisdom, I'm starting to understand saying no is like, is something that like is really respectable. And to listen, like you ask people stuff and they say no, and you're like, all right, man, your life must be really freeing to be able to say no to people. And so that's a skill that's a skill I'm currently learning. And
well, one thing that I mean, I've known you for a long time, and we haven't spent a ton of time together in the last, 15 years, whatnot.
Yeah.
20 years, but I still know you, the core person. I know where you came from. Yeah. And I know the last few times I've seen you that things have changed for you. Like you have really matured. And we're 40, so obviously it should be happening by now.
It should have happened a long time.
But the thing is that it's just, you've always been so jovial and just kind of easygoing, and you're pretty focused now. And there's a lot of change happening. That's why I wanted to have you on, because I want to kind of get to why and where you're at and where your head's at and stuff, because I'm proud of you for one. I want you to know that, but it's definitely a different, this experience taught you a lot. It's obvious,
Huge.
So, what was the biggest surprise about being an elected official?
Man, I think like just, it's weird. Like these people, like you get like this instant respect from people, and, you can like, I've always been like a horrible judge of character. Like I've always just given everybody the benefit of the doubt all the time. Everybody is like my buddy. I never, it's, when I got married, and my wife's like, why do you hang out with that person? They're kind of a dick. I'm like, well, I don't know. They're my friend. That's just them. Like I just look past like people's inadequacies or their character flaws. And so I've always just been so accepting of people. But over the last couple of years, I've really learned how to examine people if they're being genuine or not. And when you're an elected official, you get a lot of smoke blown up your ass, to be honest. Like, I was just on the school board. It should be like fun and about hanging with kids, but there's people that work for the school district that are like all nervous you're coming into a building, or they call you Mr. Board Chair or whatever. And, sometimes they're kidding, but other times you're like, what? You're giving me this like royal treatment, and it's bullshit, man. I'm just a guy. And so you can really like judge people's character by how they treat you once you're elected versus how they treated you before. And I think, and then the other thing was like other elected officials, you get to really see people's behavior. And it's changed a lot, in my opinion, like of the world. Like I used to just think everybody was like genuinely a good person. And what I've like kind of matured in lately is like people have ulterior motives like almost all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
it's funny that you thought people were genuine or like, inherently good.
I know.
That's funny. It took you 40 years to figure that out. It took me like 3.
Yeah.
but no, but that's really interesting, and it's a good thing though. I mean, these changes that I've noticed are good. I want you to know that. But the frustration that you had told me, I asked you, I said, are you going to seek re-election? And you're like, absolutely not, not for now, not now. Yeah. And what was it that made you that done with it? I mean, was it COVID? Was it, explain that to me.
Yeah. So, I mean, at first, like maybe 2 years ago, I was like, no, I'm probably not going to run for re-election. And at that time there was a really ugly school board election. And I'm like, I saw some ugly sides of people, and I'm like, I'm out. Like, this is not what I signed up for. I was jaded. And then I was like, dude, my daughter is going to be at high school next year. I missed like some of my son's baseball games for school board stuff. Not a lot, but like enough to be like, I missed part of that senior year of baseball. And we've been hustling so hard for the whole time our kids have been kids to like establish our careers and better ourselves. And we haven't taken a lot of time to just be parents. And I was like, my daughter really deserves that. And
Yeah.
I put a lot of time into other kids in this community, and my daughter deserves everything I have to give her. So
Yeah.
that was the initial motivation. And then COVID hit, and I had this group of like, I've always been a super pro union guy. I'm in a union. My new job, I'll be in a union. You know, I've worked with on the bargaining team multiple times. Super advocate for the work the union does, and even the teachers union. I mean, my wife's in that union, and so many of my friends are teachers. And this, like, I don't know. I think I expect people to have like the best think that I have the best intentions, because I've always thought that of other people, you know? So I just assume that people will trust me and like trust I'm doing the right thing. And so COVID hits, we're getting ready to like, oh, first of all, the school board doesn't make the decision on when we go back to school or not. That's, you know, the superintendent's decision. And then the board, you know, has a decision like, are we going to back the superintendent, or are we going to say, hey, no, don't go back to school. They're not ready. And we're getting all this pressure from the union about, well, not just the union, but the whole community about, hey, we're not ready, or I'm scared. And I made the choice, and I think the rest of the board made the choice to, you know, back our superintendent in saying that the kids' needs were the most important. And I will never disagree, but I think what really spoiled it for me was seeing groups of people who I know to be sold out for kids, who I know's primary focus of their lives is serving children, and they've done that for their whole careers. And then not that they're wrong for saying that I don't want to go back, or I'm wrong that, or not to say that they're wrong for having fears, but myself included, like, human nature, we just like, you know, you jump onto one system of what's right and what's wrong, and you refuse to look past and look at other factors sometimes. Like we had kids, you had kids sitting home hurting, and kids not getting the services that they're used to. And those kids and those that are in these situations, that weighed on me heavy during this COVID time, which, I mean, we'll talk about that later, but part of the decision to switch careers was because, like, what I worried about this whole time was those kids sitting at home who needed adults in their lives, and people who cared to check in on them, and parents, frankly, they needed support too in caring for their children that we weren't able to give. And as a tax funded organization, like, we have a job to do. And
Right.
if the 13-year-old at McDonald's has to go to work, and the barber has to go to work, I think if they're paying taxes and they got kids who they're expecting to be educated, we got to figure out a way to do it. And that's where the lack of faith in my leadership and in the district's leadership was really off-putting for me, because we had a plan to go back to school like the beginning of summer. And like, as soon as we stopped going to school, our staff went hard to work, like creating a plan to go back, and they busted their hump to do it. And they worked with union leadership to do it. And then through it all, I mean, through it all, it still came out to be like them against us. And my wife started getting hate mail and people assuming that she believed the same way I did, that she believed that she should go back to school and teach, and they didn't count her in as part of union solidarity, and kind of cast her out a little bit. And then myself, like, just getting hate mail on Facebook and stuff like that from people that, you know, I considered to be friends, about like, you're the blood's on your hands. We're all
Right.
You know,
The thing is,
we're all going to die.
My experience with this, and this is troubling, it's hard, you know, is that with COVID and a lot of things, I mean, we're so divided on so many things, so many people. But what you're saying is that you found that with this, that there's people that you normally agree with, even, that you were button heads with. But the difficult thing, and my girlfriend and I have conversations about this daily, about COVID, is that when you have a way that you feel about it, it's definitive. Like you cannot, it's not something you can adjust or budge on because you're so strong in your conviction that it's not negotiable, so in your mind, and I think it's so dangerous when you
For
have,
some.
when anyone,
I mean,
no, I know. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Is that we find ourselves, and the only way that I can acknowledge that is if it's something that I acknowledge in myself. I'm saying that I've had that
Right.
kind of attitude and I've had to check myself. And I know that we're not talking about, these teachers being bad people, the union being bad. Quite the opposite. It's like, wow, it was surprising that people are so non-negotiable. And I think it's so consistent across the board. I mean, we can talk about the masks coming off in society and how people are like, nope, I'm not ready yet. And I'm one of them in some ways because of the safety of children. Now for you, I can't even imagine if somebody was coming at you and saying, do you not care about these kids? And you're like, what the hell? That's why I did this in the first place,
Yeah. I'm sitting here I ain't getting paid to take this shit from you guys,
Right.
But at the same time, I did sign up for that, and I just have soft skin, man. I wish I had thick skin. That's just not me, man. I take all that stuff to heart because I'm an open book kind of guy, and that's just who I am. And then there's some strengths that come with that. So the big thing that like another huge realization for me of where I'm like this flawed, weird individual where I have strong convictions. And when it comes to like, people being able to love whoever they want, women's right to choose, things like that, dude, all day, I'm the most liberal person you've ever met. But then there's other things where like, I have this flaw where like, I'm the devil's advocate all the time with everything that comes in. I'm like, I have to weigh out both sides of this all the time. And so I have friends that are very strong, Democrats like yourself and people that are like really involved in the party and the work that the party does. And like I signed up to be a committee member with the party. And I've been like so disengaged since the election because I just have I don't know that I can fully be a Democrat all the time because like I fully understand that there's got to be a radical both sides of every issue so that at some point everyone busts their ass and we end up in the middle like that. It's sad that that's how it is, but
so
what we've lost over all this is the end up in the middle part. Like we've lost all compromise, all respect for the other side. Like in general, society just thinks, oh, you're an anti-masker, so you're a piece of shit, or you are a crazy radical liberal. You hate guns. You are like in this one state of mind, and I'm like, I'm not that guy.
I'd like to push back a little bit on that, and here's why. Okay, so I think you were talking about being a precinct committee person. Yeah. For the Democratic Party, so the DPLC, and I am a precinct committee person for the DPLC too, and I can tell you right now, my experience, I'm the same way. I'm like, I don't really want to call people. I don't want to do it your guys' way completely, but I got to say this: I've been welcomed with open arms, and I've spoken out, in ways where I've spoken out against some of the norms, and it's unfettered support that I've been welcomed. Yeah. And so I want this to be clear and why I continue. I'm with you 100%. I have the same exact feeling. But the DPLC, the Democratic Party of Lane County, has shown me that contrary to belief in the big scheme of things and what we feel like especially on a national level, that we want a big umbrella. We want to bring people to get to the table that have different voices, learn from each other, and challenge each other a little bit. And, doing a show like this, I'm going to say things that people are going to be like, whoa, like that's going to be bad for business. But I do not care, because I want it to be genuine. And I think that me and you are very similar in that way. And here's the thing that I worry about. When people like me and you who are quirky and different, we get involved and we get disenfranchised by it. If we don't continue to be at the table, then we're allowing someone else to do it. And I think it's been due time for a long time that people that are the ones that are like, screw the system, we need to be the ones getting involved. Yeah. So I understand where you're at.
That's a great way to package that.
Yeah. And I have a ton of respect for people. I got a guy that first one that comes to mind is super conservative. He's a plumber, lives in Pleasant Hill. Not going to use his name, but we talk politics. We disagree on certain core values. I think he's an amazing human being, and I've learned so much from him. And so it's really important that we reach across the aisle too. But I want it to be clear that with the Democratic Party of Wayne County, my experience is that they are like, they might roll their eyes, they may disagree, we have different strategies, but the overall goal is a big umbrella. We want as many people at the table as possible, and I think that's been pretty incredible. And I feel like I feel valued in it. So
I think just to back that up and to say like that's more my more of that shit's my problem.
Sure.
And it's not DPLC's problem at all. And it's more as I look at considering myself a Democrat and publicly saying that I'm a Democrat, I've had some problems with that. And so you're right. Like I think the fight in me is gone for a little bit. I'm tired.
Sure.
And,
sure. And there's one thing I want to say too, that's really one thing I've learned about this whole process. Now, I don't want to be ageist, so don't at me when I say this. No. But when young people get involved, which is a really incredible thing for young people to hold public office, I mean under 40, 40,
40?
Yeah. Under 40.
That's the crazy fucking part, Patrick.
No, but hear me out.
People don't fucking step up, man.
And no, there's a reason. There's a reason though that I think it's good to have both. I mean, there's just people that are phenoms that could be 25 that are just killing it. Yep. And that's incredible. We need those voices. A person like Kelly Mason, who's going to be on the board, a younger individual, she's going to bring a lot to the table, and that being said, I think that with local government, okay, when it comes to age, it's a volunteer position like you had alluded before. So there's no real pay, and maybe a parking voucher. And, so a lot of times it tends to be people that are retired. And with that, they have the time. Now, this is what I love. You didn't close the door on down the road on being like, maybe I'll get back into this later. But when your kids are at it, this is a time where you're like, I don't want to miss these years. They're going to go by. And, down the road, this experience is going to be something that you're going to gain so much from, and that maybe you can put yourself back in there when you have the time, when you actually have the time, and
absolutely.
That's an incredible thing. It's something I've learned. It's like you need somebody to hold these positions that has time. I mean, my dream is that when I retire, that's when I'll run for city council, when I can give it my 100% all. And a lot of times with these committee meetings, you want it to be fun. You just worked all day and you come home and you're like, I actually want this to be enjoyable. I don't want to be doing stuff that makes me want to bash my head against the wall, and so it's really difficult. And with COVID, we're not able to have the parties and like the gatherings where people are bumping elbows, smiling at each other and that kind of stuff. So hopefully soon we can get back to being more in public. But something I've learned is that it takes all kinds. We need people from different age groups and demographics and all that kind of stuff on these committees and on these boards. But we also need people that have the time to dedicate 100% of their time. And that's really hard to give, It
is. I think that's why it's so important for young people to get involved in politics. And hats off to Kelly. When I was talking to her, she's like, I'm still in school. Like, I'm like, oh my God, that's awesome. Like, I'm glad you're getting involved now and that you can you're picking a path. Like there's so much value in wisdom. Like I've learned that over the year that like being able to call people who have wisdom that you can trust is huge. But the other side of that is as young people being involved in politics, not having the answers, having to ask questions of the leadership, having to pose questions that they think that people is just common sense to these people who are older that are in these roles, is really good for organizations to have to answer those questions.
Yes.
And
it puts them to task, and it makes them kind of go, whoa, you're right. I actually overlooked it. So this is what I say. What I'm saying is we need both. We need,
absolutely,
young people. We need older people. And that's why committees and boards are so incredible, because you are a group of people coming to a conclusion. You can persuade each other. You can, like the 12 jurors in a court case, it's like you can really come down and communicate with each other and learn from each other and lean on each other, and it's pretty special. Go ahead.
I think that kind of segues a little bit into like something I'd love to talk about. It's just like when we're talking about new board members and what to expect, you come in with like this fire in your belly and you're going to make all the changes in the world. And there's a big misconception about how powerful the school board is I mean, obviously, yeah, it's not going the direction you want it. You can fire the superintendent, whatever. Like, of course, they have to like answer to you, and there has to be like this unspoken respect that they have of you, and that they, and you can really ride a superintendent's ass and make their job really difficult. The position that we've been in Springfield for the last however many years is we've just had like a rotating door of superintendents, which is becoming pretty common nationwide, that the superintendents don't stay very long. Our community isn't the kind of community that embraces that kind of stuff. We're kind of old school. And so we like that historical data. We like to have a guy that's been around for a long time. We like the Nancy Goldens and the Bob Kiefers of this community who, you know, serve here for a long time, make a name for themselves, and are really sold out for this community. And I think that's what we desire in those high level leadership positions. And so over the last, you know, 2 years since we hired Superintendent Hamilton, my spot of leadership has been really this collaborative governance, is what the School Board Association calls it, of like really bridging these gaps, because there was a lot of trust missing between the school board and district staff, the cabinet staff, like all the higher ups at the district. Like there's this mistrust, and we were asking questions that made it sound like we just didn't respect them, or just weren't well timed. And so I've done a lot of work in the last couple of years to like bring that together and show the superintendent that we trust him, and show and be like that boss that you want to have, that makes you want to succeed and do really well. Like I've kind of looked at it from that perspective. And there's another perspective that school boards run on, and that is question everything, make them really freaking prove it, make them accountable for, of course you make them accountable for every decision, but like just hammer the district on everything and make them answer for everything. When you want it, I want it now, I want the answer now. Like you can really be a hard ass as a board member, or you can be somebody who tries to unite things, and it takes a mix. And I think what we're going to get out of Jonathan Light is going to be somebody who's going to light a little fire under the district, and it takes all types. And I recognize that like me leaving, we're going to lose a lot of this like camaraderie, like maybe between the district and the board. But I know it's healthy, and I know we're in a place where now we can challenge our practices and improve on them, and really start to make, now that there's like this foundation of trust, and we're starting to get a foundation of a board. I know that Kelly and Jonathan can come in and really start to, ask the hard questions, and there's a strong enough foundation there that they can answer them with some trusting in the board, that there's not malicious intent. We're not going after anybody's job. We just want answers, and we want the district to be better. And I think we're set up to do that now. And I'm really excited to see Jonathan like carry that torch and make some shit happen, because I started the board wanting to make some shit happen, and I was like never in a place where we could make shit happen, because we had between rotating door of superintendents and stuff going on at A3 and restructuring A3, and then you pick your big goals, and you really have to focus on what the big picture is. And like we want our graduation rate to improve, but we can't improve the graduation rate and do 1,000 other things.
Right.
I mean, there's only so many people at a school district to do these tasks. So
right.
We really had to pick like our big items to go after. So I guess this is just me saying like, as a message to the incoming people, like I'm stoked to see a real push for change, and a real push for like the internship opportunities, and see CTE really take off, and see kids get more hands-on skills, and be in a place where we can like build now. The amount of money that we have coming in from COVID relief,
right?
And with state funding and all that kind of stuff, there's never been a better time to.
No, they can't squander it. They can't squander the opportunity and have it go to administrative costs, and that's it. Exactly. And so now we do have a lot to talk about, so we're gonna have to kind of move on. One of the biggest challenges obviously is COVID. But the other challenge moving forward for the school board that I can see is the question that you hear on Facebook or you read on Facebook every time. And it's ridiculous. And the question this is how it goes. It says, what is your position on critical race theory? And it's such a loaded question. You know it. You know that what that sounds like to me is the person is saying all lives matter, but all perspectives of history doesn't or don't. So what do you say? Now, there was a public thing that I'd like to talk about that Todd Mann had made a post about how there was a school board meeting, and I'm sorry, I'm calling it out. It was a public forum. I can do this. It was on Facebook. And he said there was 8 members running for the school board. They had a school board meeting and only 2 people showed up. And Anthony Reed, it felt like he gets an alert if anyone mentions anything remotely close to the school board on Facebook. He's like, whoop, here I am. And he said, I'm running. And then this woman asked Anthony, was not what we were talking about at all in the thread at all. Had nothing to do with it, specifically at least. And she said, what is your position on critical race theory? And he starts arguing with her about I wouldn't say arguing. He said, look, we need to talk about some of the things, the ills of our past in the history of this country. And we've done it wrong. I mean, we're still talking in some areas about Christopher Columbus, and so, a lot of the candidates that were running, mainly Kelly Mason, this is something that diversity and equity is so vital to her campaign, and it's what she's about. So I'm sure she's going to get a lot of pushback from the Thurston folks and from some of I hate to single out the Thurston folks, but I see it constantly in the Thurston Neighborhood Watch Facebook group. But your response was just hilarious to me because you were so disgruntled, and it's something you never see from a politician, because you chimed in, and these are almost exact quotes. Basically, you said, hey, lady, look, I will hold my cap to the fact that we have done what we can on the district to push anti-racist agendas. And so you can take your white sheets and burning cross and kick rocks. And so what was going through your head in that moment?
I think I just get really tired of like I said, this really one-sided people just drive me freaking nuts. And I think when you look at the racist right and you look at these people that embrace this critical race theory, you really see like people are so close-minded to seeing what's going on around them. And not that they can't, I mean, my neighbor is like as, proud boyish kind of guy as you'd ever meet. But I know him well enough to know that he's not a racist. I mean, or maybe he does some things that are racist. I do things that are racist. You do things that are racist.
Absolutely.
We all do things that are
Absolutely.
racist. But people have a good heart, and people dismiss their own, I think that's the most troubling thing for me, is that people dismiss their own good heart and will look past like the goodness that's in them to be a part of something bigger than them and hating a group, and maybe not even realizing that they're hating another group, but they'll dismiss everything that they know to be good about humankind to argue or to just piss people off. And I think you and I know both were that kind of person at some point where we would just say shit because we knew it would piss somebody off.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's in my entire life up to some point was what can I say that's going to just fucking...
Well, but I think people are passionate. I think people are passionate about this issue, and I'm not defending them. Yeah. But, the people that are asking this question, I think that I don't want to say their heart's in the right place, because it's actually in the opposite. But the reality is that they are convinced, because I think you can have a conversation about strategy of government when it comes to how to combat racism. Right. Because where is the government's place in it is a conversation that needs to be had, because people do believe that you can create equity by creating jobs, by less taxation. I've talked to people of color that have told me that they believe that they are Second Amendment absolutists, for example. They're like, you start taking away Second Amendment rights, it disproportionately hurts minorities. So there's conversations that can be had, and that's just one example, so it's not an easy fix, but I am a firm believer that until we acknowledge the ills of our past, until we talk about it. Now, and this is what I've been saying a lot lately. when it comes to race, if we as white people talk about where our ancestry started, so not our nationality for every single person, a citizen of America, I don't care what shade you are, you're an American. But your ethnicity, or your lineage or your roots may be somewhere else. So I've, celebrated my Irish heritage, for example. And then people that are of Asian descent I've talked to a ton of American, Asian people that are like, well, I'm from Korea, told me about the culture. Maybe their parents came or they themselves came as immigrants. Once you start knowing the immigrant story, we can have the conversation that all of us have had that. And except for the natives and African Americans, because it was stolen from them. And so until we acknowledge it, for Black history, I've had conversations with people where they're like, well, I don't like white supremacists, but I don't like Black supremacists. They're all talking about, I'm proud to be Black, this and that. And it's like, you know why? Because they don't know what country their ancestry was from, because it was erased.
Right.
So until we acknowledge this kind of stuff, we'll never make progress.
Yeah.
And you can't be a supremacist. You can't be a supremacist when you're the oppressed. It just doesn't exist.
That's right. It's like when people use the term reverse racism, you're like, that's not a thing, because race isn't real. Like, dominant culture created race. And so we look at race as, as it is. People of color, I guess you could put them you can't put them as racist because they didn't create.
No, it's prejudice. It's prejudice. Yeah. Prejudice can exist across the board. Yeah. And, that's the thing. You cannot be racist against white people because of the current landscape of the existence of white supremacy in our country. Then that's the thing. So this conversation that happens, what's your position on critical race theory? It always brings it up. And I always want to say it. And like you said, sometimes we catch ourselves and we say things just to be an asshole. But my attitude of what I want to say, because they're like, you're teaching our kids that they're racist. I'm like, no. We're teaching them that you're racist.
Yeah.
Because what you're saying is inherently racist. Now,
I think the point that we need to get to is that we need to teach everyone that they've done things that are racist. And it doesn't mean that you're
a bad person, a terrible person,
Satan, or that you deserve to be hung because you're done things that are racist. We've done things that are racist.
Sure.
We still are doing
and still
things
do. Yeah.
We may always do things that are racist. The difference needs to be that we cop to it and try to fix it. And this white guilt that I feel like I'm surrounded with by the conservative people I know is no, I'm not going to feel guilty for this. It's not my problem. I didn't do this, or, it's a made up problem. No, none of those things are true. It's a real problem. Nobody's asking you to pay reparations. No one's asking you to do anything except for admit that some of the things that our ancestors did was fucked up.
Right.
And to admit that some of the things you say are not right.
Now, let me ask you this.
So examine yourself.
Now, did you get that question asked to you maybe through email in your time on the board?
Oh, man. We occasionally we'll get emails that are like, my student was taught, is being taught by, all liberal left people, and they shouldn't be exposed to only one perspective and this kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, I think any teacher teaches from a place of what they know. And I don't believe, we've all been in classes where the teacher's perspective gets shoved down your throat.
Sure.
But that's part of life, and part of education is filtering out that everyone has a perspective, and that there's good and bads of everyone's perspective, and no person is perfect.
Right.
And so if you're telling your kids that everything their teacher says is golden, and then getting mad at a teacher when they shell out their perspective on something, I don't know.
I think the biggest problem that we've had in the structure of learning and education is that it is exactly that. It's the teacher speaks, the teacher's word is golden, and the students are not heard from enough.
Right.
And so that needs to be students of color. That needs to be all students. That needs to be, we need to have conversations directly with students. Now,
encouraging free thought.
I hope that this is okay that I mentioned this, because it was a private conversation, but I talked to Mayor Sean Van Gordon, and he asked me about ideas that I might have for to encourage civic participation in the youth. And what I told him is, I was like, the fact that you're asking me this is really incredible. Kind of like you had talked about before, how he holds a very prestigious position and a very powerful position in our community. And he's somebody I admire deeply. And the fact that he's even asking me those questions is such an honor to me. And I'm like, you know, that if you reach out to children, teenagers, high school kids, they're a lot smarter than a lot of people give them credit. So I think that if you just ask them questions about what is it that you think would motivate you to build towards civic participation in the youth, they're going to be inspired by the question itself, by even being considered. And so I think that I use that as an example, and I hope he's okay with it that I mention it. But I just love that his mind is even there, that he's like, what can we do to motivate civic participation in the youth? And I think that the whole education system has gone on it wrong a lot of times. And we can talk about how this class sizes are too large for this kind of, 40 kids in a class size. How are you supposed to listen to every single kid in 35 minutes, And I mean, we could be here forever, but it's just, we need to have more input from the kids, and you don't want the patients running the asylum, but at the same time, because no one, I'm kidding. I was going to say they shouldn't have listened to me and you, but that's wrong. I think if we were actually treated like adults in high school, that's what I hated about Springfield High and why I transferred to South and why I got a 3.5 at South and a 1.2 at Springfield was because I was treated like a criminal at 14 years old. Was I a criminal? Yes, but that's beside the point.
Exactly.
No, I mean, and there was a few teachers that were like, I'm going to break ranks here and I'm going to tell you you're special. I think you're really incredible, and I think you're a really inspiring person. And I'm just like, it's just it was built in for me where it was going to be, I was only going to be accepted by a few people,
right?
Like my close friends, one or two teachers, and so, yeah, it's pretty frustrating. Yeah, that question is tough about critical race theory. And I know I got off the point, but it's because these people.
The fact is that anybody that's using that term is a fucking racist. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, and I love that.
Well, not the term, but when they're framing the question, what's your position on it? It's a trap, is what it is,
Absolutely.
And so that's the point, is that they're trying to be like, see, you are that liberal leftist agenda, and blah 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 blah. We talked with people that I had interviewed for the school board races. Technical. Yeah. So we had talked to the people running for the school board races about Kendrick Lamar and how Kendrick Lamar's poetry, which has won awards, the most prestigious awards for writing, was included in a curriculum at North Eugene High School. And then someone made a decision where they're like, whoa, no, we're not going to teach that. And people are really being short-sighted on thinking that you can't teach nuance in school, and I mean, we just, as a society, need to be more nuanced, because you can talk about how some of these rappers, MCs, and whatnot are, troubled, but then that's also a conversation about the product of our surroundings and society that we need to be having. And so the kids are going to perk up because they're going to feel heard, even if they're being talked to about rap, because they're going to know more than the teacher.
Right.
On the topic. And they love that. When the students know more than the teacher in a topic, you've seen it. The students perk up and they're like, here's my time to shine.
Yeah.
And that's when it actually is an inspiring session, so.
And I think that's exactly where, like, I see education going. And I think we're like, gosh, I mean, the bar that we, like, what we see is like way up here, right? Like we see, we see what like a perfect world looks like. And then obviously a system as large as education takes time to change. And there's a lot of things that need to change. But what I really realized is that it takes radicals. And I could have been more radical in my requests and the things I wanted to see. Because it's really to get to where we need to be is really going to take some people that got a lot of fire in their belly that want to see things change. Because you look at the changes that we've made in career and technical education over the last 5-10 years in Springfield. Like, we were already probably a front runner in the state for CTE stuff. We didn't drop shop classes when everybody else did. We held that stuff really close, and we made it a priority even in the worst times. So that said, being a front runner in the state, we still aren't where we need to be. And we still have, I mean, one of the problems I've talked about lots of times is we still have seniors who, even if you don't have a perfect high school career, you get to be a senior and you get almost half the day off. Like, what the hell? We're just letting kids out run the street for half the day.
Well, there's job. I actually am okay with it because of the fact that there's job. People have jobs at that time. I mean, if you're driving, you have to pay for it.
Right, but what I'm saying is that needs to be like a requirement. Like, I don't want kids sitting at home or not being accountable. Our taxpayers paid money for that time.
Sure. And that's on the parents. I mean, I hate to say it, but that's on the parents because especially senior year, junior year, you should be writing. What you should be doing that time is applying for colleges. Right. You should be writing essays. There's time management.
That's where that's where the change needs to happen, Patrick.
Sure.
Is in the achievement gap because not all the parents are set up to do that.
No, not at all.
The ability or like, I mean, I did the process of registering for school as a first generation college student essentially, and like I navigated that process.
Right.
It was freaking hard.
I did it the right way. So, I dicked around my freshman year. I got no credits, and that way, my senior year, I had to do night school, summer school. I had to learn a work ethic when it was starting to matter. No, I don't condone what I did my freshman year at all.
No, but what I'm saying is like we can do all the things that, like, anytime we say that parents need to do something, parents need to be involved, and obviously kids who have parents who are involved and are doing things to better their future are going to have a better shot at life. I mean, that's just how it is. But how do we bridge that gap in school and make those things more systematic to eliminate like the systematic racism and sexism and just the great divide in people, to allow for everyone to have those opportunities if they need it, and to encourage kids to go after what's next.
Yeah.
Because that's where we kind of missed the ball. Like you said, you're going to sit in a classroom and listen to me talk about crap you don't care about all day. Like why do you want to continue your education if education is the most boring thing you've ever been a part of and frankly uninspiring? Like, if you can go get inspired by smoking weed in the alley and hanging out with your friends and
learning about society is what
going to make more money selling drugs anyways. Then
sure. I mean, not just that. It's a lot of times. I always used to call it researching your role, but a lot of times it's learning about society. It's actually learning about a hard knock life. Now we don't have a lot of time, so we do want to talk briefly. And I mean, I'm going to have you back on a million times because I love chatting with you. It's amazing. I like to keep it at about an hour because if not, people tune out. And so let's talk about Willamalane. So you're leaving Willamalane after 20 years, started as a lifeguard, and then at the end of it, you were the president. No, you weren't. No, but you had worked up in different capacity and whatnot. But what was it that led to your decision to leave Willamalane?
So like I got the ADD pretty bad, and I deal with some depression and stuff here and there. And 10 years of it. I mean, I've worked with them for 20 years. The last 10 years, I've been in a coordinator role, which is, like a middle management-ish position. Like, I don't supervise people, but I coordinate stuff, train people, create all the fun stuff. Like, probably the funnest job you could ever have. But after 10 years of anything, I mean, as somebody with ADHD, I'm bored 5 minutes into any task. So 10 years of something, I was just kind of like,
right.
It's time. We've had a lot of organizational changes at Willamalane. Some of them are going to prove to be for the better over time. It's just, anytime there's an organization that deals with turnover and large scale reorganizations, there's some growing pains involved. And Willamalane went really fast from being the memorial building with one receptionist, being like this really mom and pop organization, to having Bob Kiefer Center, expanding the parks we have, passing crazy bonds, like this community just valuing what we did so much that it just exploded. And so we went from having one receptionist, Joyce, who knew freaking everything about everything in the district, to having multiple departments with multiple people working front desks and answering phones in like a very short thing. So there's like the scaling of that organization has been has just been crazy. And so like obviously you get switched around and moved departments, and it's never, I mean, sometimes you get what you want, sometimes you don't. I got taken off middle school sports, which was kind of like, I've never been like a sports guy, but I really loved that program. And kind of when that went away, I was like, like
you played sports, you just weren't good.
Exactly. I was horrible. I didn't remember anything about any of them or where I was supposed to be or the rules or, I mean, I was too busy like spacing off.
No. Yeah. So it's just time for something different. It's time for a new adventure.
Time for a new adventure. Yeah.
I mean, I'm Zach, I'm extremely proud of you. I'm extremely proud of the kind of person you are. You've always been, you've grown and matured like we had talked about, but you're still the same 12-year-old dumbass that was one of my absolute best friends. And it's really
times, man.
It's really cool to see the person that you've became, the father. I mean, I'm guessing you're a good dad. I still think it's your wife that does all the work.
Yeah.
But on the first podcast, we had talked about how like you just kind of smile and eat dinner. I don't know. But I know that's not true. I know that you had talked so positively about your kids on the last podcast, and I've never met them, but you talked about how they're just such inherently good kids. Now that was 2 years ago, so who knows? Maybe they're both in jail. But no. But I mean, that proof is in the pudding when you have that. And I think the structure, obviously when you're married to their mom, it makes things a lot easier, and I don't want to downplay what it is to be a single parent by any means. I'm actually saying it's a challenge. It's a very difficult thing, and I have a ton of admiration for the people that do it. But it makes things easier when you stick it out, It
does.
And so I don't know. I'm just really honored to call you my friend, and I'm super proud of you for putting the work in the last 4 years on the school board. And really just giving it your all and learning from it. I mean, it's amazing to hear what you have to say, and I can't wait to be able to, off camera or off air, to be able to learn more about it too, and you tell me the truth.
And I'm an open book too.
Yeah, you're pretty blunt, and I think it's great.
Sit here dropping the F-bomb and being the school board chair and whatever.
Well, no one listens to the show, so that's a really good thing. No, I think this is a really great episode. I think this conversation is valuable, and I look forward to having more with you. We're getting to that hour, so we could sit here and talk. You had mentioned mental health and with men, and it's so important. I mean, say a few things. We have 3 minutes, but say a few things of why you think that's so important.
I think it's important. I think we carry this huge burden as men of like this macho like perspective all the time, and for men to be able to say I'm having a hard day, or to be able to go in the bathroom and cry for 20 minutes because shit just sucks right now. Those kind of things just aren't acceptable. And we've
widely aren't accepted.
Because there's people that gender roles that we've put on ourselves, which is why I would consider myself a feminist too, is like feminism isn't just about like women's rights. It's about this whole system that we've created where men are supposed to be this thing and women are supposed to be this thing, and all men can't fit that mold because society's created such a huge role for men to fill. And so I think the biggest thing on mental health is realizing that no matter who you are, you're going to need help, and it's okay to get that, and it's okay to tell your friends you're having a bad day. And I mean, I'm sick of seeing our dudes we know kill themselves because life's too hard and the pressure is never ending. The first thing you ask some gal when she's dating a new guy is what kind of job he has, or what kind of car does he drive, or whatever. And the prestige that's put on males is about what kind of job you have and what you do for a living and how much money you make. And then what we've done for so many years is the most prestigious women in the world are the ones that are privileged enough to stay at home with their families or make that choice and their family can afford it. Not just like homemakers, but we're talking like, Kardashian level. We put these people that appear to have no responsibility and just get to raise their kids and have fun on like this super high level. But
yeah, I think that it's really important for people to, every individual, male, female, whatever gender, we need to have both traits of masculine and feminine traits. Absolutely. And these are old standards that we're going on. And I think we're breaking those molds now more and more and more. But I think it's really...
It needs to be okay for adult men to watch horse movies and cry. And that's what I'm all about.
I'm not going to do that. But no, I'm just... No, I mean, I hear what you're saying. And we don't have time really. And unfortunately, it's such a nuanced conversation. Now, that being said, I mean, it's like the struggles that women go through is just, I mean, it's phenomenal. massive. And we're not talking about that. What we're talking about is, and you're so right, is that they're like, buck up, kid, go to work, shut your mouth, just plow along. And
work the job you hate for 30 years and retire because that's what you're supposed to do.
Well, you're doing this big move. I hope it works out for you. And the beauty is that I'm sure Willamalane would take you back with open arms. Maybe not.
And that was my goal. Like there's been a lot of pain in that organization, a lot of change, but good God, it's been my life. And so much of my identity's wrapped up in that. So I can never leave. I fill out my volunteer application before I left. I'll be working Haunted Hayride and all that stuff, 'cause it's been such a big part of my life. So Patrick, I really appreciate the work you do. And I know having a podcast that nobody gives a shit about is really hard.
It's growing. I mean, the beauty is...
I'm kidding. But really, like, this is you're using your talents and your skills to, like, make the world a better place.
I'm trying. Yeah.
And you're doing a good job at it. Like, getting the word out there and letting people talk, hear a school board candidate talk, or listen to the mayor talk off the cuff and get to know these people that are leading our community
it's pretty cool. And, the beauty is that I like to think that for 30 minutes to an hour, that us little peons in Springfield, Oregon are little celebrities. We get to and it gives a platform for people to come and share their stories. And it's been extremely rewarding, and I've learned so much, and it's a beautiful thing. So Zach Bessett, I appreciate you so very much. I picked a song today that I thought you get a kick out of because it's really wacky. A local performer. So Tim Miller, one of my customers, I've been cutting his hair for quite a few years. He's an older guy, so we had not seen him since COVID. His wife was cutting his hair, and so he popped back in. He's like, "I'm vaccinated. I'm ready to mingle." And we got to talking about making music and that kind of stuff. And he said, "Well, I don't have any recordings that my name is the main guy, but I've played with a friend of mine. His name is Brooke Adams, and he goes by El Borko. And so this is a fun little playful song that I think they had worked on together, but I know that Brooke Adams had recorded. And so we're going to end it with that. Zach Bessett, thank you very much. And so this is El Borko with Boulevard Street.
Off of the super highway, where the chemical plants excrete, by the Crisco River coffee shop, where inferior decorators meet. Well, there's a golf course called Goose Meadows, but the meadows and geese are gone. And a cafe called Las Morenas, but all the people inside are blonde. Down on Boulevard Street, it's a little pequeño small. In Las Casas, California, by Las Tiendas shopping mall. You can see me coming, but you'll never see me go. Because I get up really early, and I'm quiet, and I'm slow. And if I never play backgammon, well then I never can be beat. Mixing up the spam and salmon down on Boulevard Street. Down on Boulevard Street.